see growing up was Detroit go through a huge remodeling. And I saw Detroit in a light that was not painted well. I saw it when Detroit was bankrupt. I saw when people were leaving more and more and more. I saw it when people didn't have jobs. I saw it in those types of things. So I definitely think that with the bad image, at least across the country, that Detroit has, with being the most dangerous city, with the high crime rates, with the history of bankruptcy and things of that nature, I definitely think that these statues represent hard work, dedication, and essentially just really touch on what it means to continue to thrive despite what we go through, continue to move on despite having difficulties that are out of your control and sometimes are in your control, but it's just about what do you do afterward, and I think that these statues definitely represent that.
I think the Spirit of Detroit statue is the most recognized statue and icon, certainly in the city of Detroit, and becoming most recognized icon in the country relative to public art. And I think that's because of the indomitable nature of the spirit of Detroiters. We've gone through struggles throughout the history of European settlement here. And I think the Spirit of Detroit in particular became really an icon of our spirit and our sense of resiliency going through bankruptcy. Just to mention one experience, but we've had experiences throughout our history.
With statues, you tend to remember them longer because they're imprinted in their mind. The way that the sculptor sculpted them, the way that they drew it, the way that it looks, the way it's displayed, the colors, the type of material, things of that nature, they bring some type of life to them. And because of that, it makes you remember them more. Like the Spirit of Detroit, initially, we found out that it wasn't called that from jump. It was over time that the city adopted it because of the value, because of the way it was made, and essentially what it represents.
It's really evident how much public art we have in the city. And public art is a very important element of our heritage and our culture, but it's also a very important element of our artistic and architectural appreciation. And Detroit's a city to be appreciated. So I think as people wander around downtown, explore downtown, pay attention to the public art, I think their eyes are really open to what a remarkable achievement we've had over the centuries in really accomplishing a public space. It goes back to the early plans of Augustus Woodward back in 1805 to create this incredible Baroque grid that was only evidenced here and in Washington, D.C., on this side of the Atlantic Ocean. And people in Europe called it a backwater Baroque when they heard that here in the United States we're actually creating cities that followed a Baroque plan. And again, outside of Washington, D.C., Detroit's the only city that reflects that.
I've talked to plenty of people when I was graduating high school a couple years ago. They were like, I want to get out of Michigan. I want to get out of Detroit. They always say that. And I never really understood that when I was graduating. I was like, I love this city. Like, don't get me wrong, there's definitely parts that we need to fix and there's definitely parts that we need to improve upon, but I think just straight up being like, oh, I just want to leave, like, I feel like that does a disservice to the city. And I think it definitely speaks to that quote that the greatest things happen when people are ridiculing you, when people are putting you down. And I think that fuels you to be better, that fuels you to work harder, that fuels you to be more dedicated. And I think the Spirit of Detroit, the Tiger statues, the Joe Louis fist especially, since it represents fighting, Detroit's greatest champion, one of the greatest champions. And I think with those symbols in place, with the publicity that Detroit gets, mostly negative but somewhat positive, it evokes not only us residents, but it evokes us Michiganders to do better, to work harder, be more dedicated, and not only that, but give back to what has given so much.